So welcome, this meeting is being recorded. Welcome to the Global Network webinars. My name is Sean Loveland. I'll be moderating this webinar together with my colleague Yusi Zhang. Alexander Loschke is on leave today. We are very happy to have with us today Jens Dosset and Jean-Baptiste Nonin from the OECD to share their lessons learned applying their user-centered software development paradigm as digital product managers of the SISCC.stat suite, a leading open source statistical information system platform custom built for the needs of statistical offices and central banks. For those of you who'd like to learn more about the .stat suite, we've provided the links in the invitation to the .stat Academy and the SISCC website, which have a wealth of resources for you if you'd like to learn more. So just a little preface, I wanted to say, why did we organize a global webinar about something as boring as software development? I say that tongue-in-cheek as a software engineer because I think it's fascinating, but this is something that maybe is worth talking about. So the software is everywhere in today's digital-first world. I think a lot of us who have spent time in our homes during the pandemic over the past 2 years have realized that all interactions we've had with the outside world have sort of gone through the medium of someone's software, whether it's Teams or whether it's a website. So the way we reach people is increasingly connected to the quality of the software we produce. And this is certainly true for statistical offices and central banks. Yet for software-based digital products to thrive, they must remain tailored closely to important user needs, which are constantly evolving. Building reliable software-based digital products that evolve in tandem with user needs requires a user-centered paradigm that departs from classical software approaches. Classical software development projects where project managers use waterfall-style management to build monolithic software systems based on closed code and with manual testing and deployment phases often face substantial challenges in meeting the rapidly evolving needs of end users and tend to be expensive and of unreliable quality. So in this talk, Jens and Jean-Baptiste will share their experiences as the SISCC product team, which has evolved to embrace agile DevOps-based workflows that embrace modern software engineering approaches and lean product management principles. They will show how product managers apply user-focused functional design principles, how the solution team manages the open source project to maximize code sharing, and how the engineering team practices continuous delivery of componentized software with a high degree of automation and velocity, which optimizes quality, productivity, shipping time, thanks to state-of-the-art technologies such as Git and containerization. Now let me tell you about our two speakers. Jens Dosset is leading the Smart Data Solutions team at the OECD. Statistics and Data Directorate. He has been involved in several projects developing tools and platforms for the OECD statisticians over the past 13 years as a developer, architect, and team leader. In his current function, Jens is focusing on driving the .stat suite product design and development. In this function, he led his team in the SISCC in adopting cutting-edge technologies from the world of agile development, DevOps, cloud, and user-driven product management. Jens is the chair of the Architecture Task Force in the Statistical Information Systems Collaboration Community and co-chair of the SDMX Technical Working Group. Before joining the OECD, Jens started his career at Eurostat, where he was specialized in seasonal adjustment techniques and tools. Jens is a mathematician by education. Jean-Baptiste Nonin is a product analyst consultant for the Smart Data Solutions team at the OECD, Statistics and Data Directorate. Since 2015, he is involved in various projects for building and delivering statistical tools, especially the .stat suite for the Statistical Information System Collaboration Community. Jean-Baptiste mainly coordinates user needs and developer work. He orchestrates the planning and delivery in an agile and collaborative way, and he ensures transparency, consistency, traceability in a mature open source model. Before joining the OECD, Jean-Baptiste started his career as a journalist and press editor. Then he turned to the wide world of data consultancies. So that's a couple of practical things before I turn over to our speakers. We will hear the presentations of our speakers, and then we will have a question and answer session at the end. Please feel free to write comments and questions into the chat at any time. During the Q&A, please ask the question yourself, or if you wish, we can ask the question for you. Just let us know. As always, this global webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the global network of data officers and statisticians at Yammer. We invite you to continue the discussion on the global webinar after this discussion. Over to you, Jean-Baptiste and Jens, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks to Jean from the UNSD for the invitation. I will share my screen. So it should come up quite soon. Just a second. Okay. Very good. Okay, I think we are ready. I'm very happy to be with you today. And before I start, could I please ask you to participate in a tiny 2-question survey to better get you to know and try to adapt as best as possible to your needs. Please follow the link on the top right side of the screen with your smartphone or computer. You can also use the QR code to connect if you prefer. And okay, while you are getting prepared, I would like to say a few introductory words about the presentation that my colleague Jean-Baptiste Nonin and I, Jens Saussé, will give. You can see from the title, we will give you insights into our experience with user-centered software development. Why would this subject matter? Just a second. Yeah. It's because, generally spoken, software is most successful when it is tailored to most important current user needs. However, in an ever-changing world, those needs are constantly evolving, and also a software that wants to stay successful must always evolve as closely as possible to those. We will see in the presentation that software development requires to be organized in a specific way in order to stay tuned to the pressing user needs. Okay, I hope that you are meanwhile that you have managed to connect to the survey. So let's start. So the first question is about your current professional main occupation, to see if you primarily deal with data as a consumer or as a producer, and was rather a data software user, or if you take part in software development on the functional or technical part, for instance. Or if you are in a high-level management position or stakeholder role. Yes, there's also an escape answer in case none of these responses fit to your case. And so, yeah, please go ahead with participating in the vote. Let's see which professions, which occupations are most used in our organization. There is also the link at the top of the screen again, if you are still looking to get connected. So please don't hesitate. So we will wait a few minutes to get everyone a chance to express yourself. I hope we are not only two participants today.
I wonder if you need to refresh the screen. I don't know.
Okay. Yes, indeed. Refreshing is not as instantly as I thought. That's very good. So we see, we see there are a lot of data producers here. So statisticians who, work with the statistical data, which is very interesting. And I think that there is a number of points here on today on this. Okay, very good. Just maybe update again. Yeah, so no change since before. Okay, very good. Then let's go to the second question. And we go back. The second question tries to figure out how much you have already been involved in agile development. You might never have heard about it, or you might not have had the chance to experience it, even though you are interested in. Or you actually already develop yourself in agile mode. Or finally, you have unsuccessfully tried, in which case, please don't hesitate to raise challenging questions during the presentation. Again, in case none of the responses fit to you, you can make use of the escape option. And again, I will update my screen to see how things evolve. Yeah, it's very interesting. So there are actually already a number of participants who use agile development, which is really good. And so also you might have questions. And then let's update another time. Yeah, it's really the winner is we are doing it already. Very good. So we are not alone here. Okay, thanks a lot. To start, let's dive into the situation of a late night concert. I guess most of you have lived such a moment in your life. The lights are down, the music is up, the artists on the stage perform. All spotlights are on them, the producers of the show. And you are in this audience in the dark. You can't barely see yourself. You might be enthusiastic, enjoy the music, and have a great moment. Or maybe you actually don't like it. It's maybe too loud or too low. You might be too constricted, or you are bored because the audience is rather deserted. The glaring staging light might blind your eyes and you can't clearly see the artists. You might even leave the concert. The artists, they wouldn't notice any of this because they can't see you. Actually, some of the artists seem always looking to the ground. The concert might be a disaster, even if the artists try to give their best performance. So what if the spotlights are at least periodically turned to the audience to give them faces and voices, to let them express how they feel, to get them engaged? This would surely increase the likelihood of a successful concert, I guess. And this is exactly what user-centered agile software development is about. Give the users a regular, real chance to provide constructive feedback. By the way, also during these presentations, don't hesitate to use the chat to get involved. And when you speak later on, to turn on your cameras. Maybe at this point, one word about the advertisement poster of this webinar. The image here reminds me somehow the first dark concert picture with only spotlights on the stage, because it shows a machine with some inward-looking performance indicators without a glimmer of any users. This resembles more classical software development. So maybe it could have been looking more like this, right? By the way, the next time we can include here a participant survey on which poster you prefer. Okay, then let's have a look at today's agenda. We have prepared 4 points, which are all centered around the question on how to best serve the user. You will see how to better tailor the product to pressing of these user needs, how to profit from synergies to make the best possible products, and how we can improve our development and delivery process to best serve the users. But before we start with these 4 points, let me briefly introduce you to the software and software producing entity that we will use as example in this presentation. This software is the .stat suite developed by the Statistical Information Systems Collaboration Community that I will shortly call SISCC in the following. SISCC is a reference open source community for official statistics. The community is currently composed of 15 members. So actually, we recently welcomed Statistics Canada and is focusing on product excellence and delivering concrete solutions to common problems through co-investment and co-innovation. And so these two words, co-investment and co-innovation, are really key, and I will say later a little bit more about that. The .stat suite is a successor of the legacy .stat application. It's a complete redevelopment from scratch, fully based on the STMX standard. And the .stat suite is composed of 3 main modules: the Data Explorer, which is an easy-to-use graphical user interface for the end users to consume the data. Then .stat Core, the native STMX native backbone. So this is the STMX storage behind the scenes. And then there is the back office application, so-called data lifecycle manager. So it's for the statisticians to manage the data through the statistical production lifecycle. And so as many of you are such data producers, this is then probably the tool that would correspond most to your daily tasks. Okay, let's now dive into the first agenda point, which is about how to better tailor the product to the user needs. The first and very important paradigm shift is from project management to product ownership, from the role of product manager to the role of product owner. Even though project management was and still is a very adequate tool for certain domains, such as construction works, or in statistical domain, maybe a statistical activity such as population surveys, it has shown penalizing limits in software development. Indeed, projects are unique and temporary with a fixed start and end date and with a fixed goal. Everything is defined according to a plan based on interchangeable resources. The manager checks progress according to the plan and escalates in case of a significant derivation from the plan. So the focus is on following the plan and on the delivery under the motto, on time, on budget, and on scope. Often this is quite too rigid for software development, where the activity is of longer term or even constantly ongoing. When developing a software product, the center of attention is on satisfying user needs based on user research and thorough product design. The product owner works with established developer teams and bridges between the users and the developers, as we will see a little bit later. The product owner manages productivity, quality, and timeliness with high agility. This allows for flexibilities of an ever-changing product roadmap, which depends on the implementation progress and the simultaneously evolving user needs. In product management, the focus is on delivering value. At the SISSC, we are using 4 functional design principles. I think it's quite important to have a look at these. So after the previous slide, you can easily understand why the first principle is about the user focus. So for that, you need to identify and concentrate on the main objectives of the solution from an end user point of view. So although the needs of the users do vary a lot, thorough research allowed us summarizing the user's expectations for the .stat suite Data Explorer as follows. Let me easily access the organization statistical data. Let me find, understand, and use the data I need. This is just an example. Similar user research needs to be done for any product or software model. The second functional design principle fosters task performance, which is about making the users as efficient as possible. So we can achieve this through concentrating the user interface features on the added value tasks of the users and automating all the rest. For instance, efficiency can be obtained also by building on proven and popular features rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. The third principle requires high user autonomy. We can accomplish autonomy with intuitive, clear, proactive, guiding, and well-termed user interfaces. For public end-user applications, we need The need of a user manual is absolutely to be avoided. For instance, I believe that nobody of you would like to read the user manual really before using an e-commerce website, right? And the fourth and last principle is defining 3 feature criteria which will define if a feature will actually be added to the software or not. So the first one is the feature, the feature solves a problem users actually have. The second one is the feature is usable. The third one is the feature isn't creating clutter. On the website usertesting.com, you can clearly read the following. Features are double-edged sword. Releasing a great one can be the defining moment that takes your product to the next level. Explosive growth, overjoyed users, investor money raining down from the sky. Yeah, maybe. But more often than not, new features become just another item in your ever-expanding navigation bar, one that's distracting your users away from the main reasons they're there. As the list of features you add to your product grows, so does the impact they have on your user experience, on your budget, and on the effectiveness of your team. So it becomes key to understand that software development is not simply about continuously adding features. They may actually become clutter and worsen your product. We also understand that not all users are the same. Actually, when it comes to users' computer skills, they are worse than you might think. According to an OECD study in 2016, only a third of the people in OECD countries can complete medium complexity tasks. This knowledge needs to be taken into account when we develop software to be used by the wide public. Otherwise, from the start, we would exclude a wide range of users simply because the software will be too complex for them. So in order to better know how our users actually cope with the software, what are the pain points for them and what they expect? Yeah, we need to look over the user's shoulder and really in the original sense of these words. We have to sit behind them, watching and listening to them when they use the software, and this in a regular manner. We need to continuously monitor the usage and test the usability with feedback from real end users, and it's not always easy to get actually access to them. And the typical purposes of such usability tests would be, for instance, to identify the product main pain points, to check if users understand the navigation, to observe how easily and quickly people can accomplish tasks, or to validate if users understand the value proposition of the application or website. For the .stats3 Data Explorer, our interviewers really physically met with different users in Tunisia, gave them tasks to do, and watched and listened them doing. This gave us a number of insights on general usability issues that we didn't see ourselves as product owners, because we already know the product very well. Product owners do not only need to carefully listen to users and understand their needs, they also have to turn them into functional specifications for the developers. The challenge is that users and developers don't really use the same words and often have trouble to understand each other correctly. The product manager works with as a communication facilitator. He or she needs to understand and speak with both users and developers, and thus acts as a translator. Being user-centered means taking this responsibility seriously. So that should be enough for today on the product design. So let's move on to the next agenda point, which is about how we can convince the stakeholders to let us focus on the most pressing user needs. Software development often was and still is managed in so-called waterfall mode, according to a well-defined multi-month or multi-year plan. So first, all user needs are collected, when the complete and detailed functional requirements are established and the software user interfaces are designed. when the software is fully developed and tested, and finally it's rolled out, and sometimes a change management is organized. Often this can be followed by a new waterfall cycle. You, as a product manager, believe that you know what's coming and when, since all is planned. Unless things do not go by the plan. There often is an overflow of impediments, there are unforeseen events, or on contrary, draining resources, underestimated workloads, and with insufficient resources or time. In software development, waterfall projects frequently do not succeed. This is where agile development with its planning in short iterations comes in. This prepares for uncertainty and reduces the risk and amount of potential wasted resources. The course can be easily changed when the weather conditions change, and they will. Yeah, be really assured, they will. Agile development combines flexibility over time with a conditional foresight. You can plan stepwise, per iteration, and only as far as currently needed. You can immediately take into account new urgent and important needs and changed priorities. For instance, at SISCC, we use an adjustable flight planner instead of a constrained roadmap. It puts the different high-level functions on a flight path, allowing everyone to know with higher confidence level what will come in the near future and with reduced likelihood what might come later. However, stakeholder understanding and acceptance is required, of course, to move from budget-driven project in waterfall mode to an agile approach, whether Scrum or Kanban. Stakeholders will not know in advance on what features the provided budget will be spent, but the agreed process allows them trusting that the best possible business value will be delivered. So with this, let's turn to the third agenda point on synergies, which means how can we profit from synergies to make the best possible products. One of the first basic steps is to move from a self-oriented monolithic application to a componentized architecture. This will not only allow for more flexible technical architectures, also called topologies, that better adapt to the divergent needs of the members of a bigger community, such as SISCC. It's also important for internal reusability and for supporting plug-and-play scenarios. Ideally, componentized architecture doesn't stop at decomposing the software into a few main modules, but also into micro subservices and reusable micro building blocks. This enables, with little effort, the assembly of such building blocks into tailored user interfaces that take specific organizational, regional, and cultural differences into account. For SISCC, the principal building blocks look like this. So in addition to the already mentioned three main models of the .stat suite, there are a number of important microservices and libraries. Two of them that I would like to highlight here especially are the STMX web service of Eurostat and the underlying STMX source library implementation that SISCC are reusing for the STMX storage features. These building blocks and their components can be assembled in very different ways, so it's worthwhile to notice that the STMX standard serves here as one of the most important glues between these blocks. So STMX is really key. Once you have componentized architecture with isolated building blocks, you will be able to create synergies also through collaborative development. Collaborative development indeed is about co-investment and co-innovation, as I mentioned earlier. A community can profit from many brains, diverse knowledge, and multiple experiences, including those of the users. This is where today the main value of SISCC is seen. The ultimate step in generating synergies, actually potentially enormous synergies, is the move from closed code to open source. But don't believe that this is simply about making source code available to others. It's rather about maximizing the reuse and sharing of source code between your community and other communities or organizations in both directions. It allows others to use your software, but also to help improving it by submitting generally beneficial code changes. For that to happen, you need to manage the user community and stimulate contributions, so it doesn't come from alone. It's not easy and it takes some efforts, but it pays at the end, as we see in the SICC. So finally, let's move to the fourth point on the agenda about user-centered delivery. And my colleague Jean-Baptiste Nonin will present how we can improve our development and delivery process to best serve the users. So Jean-Baptiste, please take the floor.
Thank you, Jens, and hello everyone. So I will share my screen and please let me know if you see it.
Yes.
Okay. So when it comes to users in delivery, so we can talk about end users, administrators, and organization at large. We must ask ourselves how to continuously deliver a secured and user-centric product in the most efficient way. And by efficient, I mean fast and with always high quality. So this was a tricky challenge for us, but as solution, we literally embrace DevSecOps. So more than DevOps, DevSecOps is develop, secure, and operates. So to us, it's a framework for automated delivery process, a way of working and a maturity plan that can help us delivering faster by iteration, as well as being flexible when it comes to receiving feedback, so we can really easily reiterate and deliver again. So the objective always being reactivity and security in open source projects. So we plan with the end user. It's all about what Jens presented about stakeholders and user-centric approach of needs. We code, we build, we test again with some key stakeholders sometimes, and then we publicly release new version of the product. In our SICC community world, each organization deploy this new version of the product in their own instance, providing new feature to their end users. They will then operate together with us in order to ensure the maintainability of the infrastructure and the product. Monitoring usages and usability of the feature will then trigger replanning and making the product evolving again. So quickly, there are, for me, a few key aspects and principles, I would say, that can ensure a very efficient DevSecOps process. So from the bottom left first, there is a code base. So the Git Flow process, we apply Git Flow process for all of our code base that is stored in the cloud. So it means rule for each of the developers to create what is called branches, and where they make their code change, then submit it for review and integration to then a main branch, a main version of the code, I would say, which is first a develop branch where there is a quality assurance that is made, and then a master branch that will correspond, I would say, to a trusted version of the final product. In the middle of this process, we use Gitlab pipelines, and this is a key piece of the process because this is where all the magic can happen. And all the main benefits of a DevSecOps process. It's the automation of the build and deployment of, as well as checking the codes, testing it, and then deploying it to a final functional quality check environment for later delivery. So each pipeline will run with a series of steps that includes unit tests to ensure the maintainability of the code. We cover, for instance, at minimum of 70% of our code with unit tests. We have integration tests, It means that a new piece of code won't break the rest of the product. We have various security tests, which is really a big effort for us, but with added values. So there are what we call static scans to ensure the again the maintainability of the code base related to security. There are dynamic scans to ensure that the product won't be exposed to attack from outside when it's on the web. And soon we will add some dependency scan. That's where you in open source project you very often use external libraries of codes. They are already trusted, but we also need to ensure that this, in our context, is also security proof. And finally, we have performance tests. That's where you have a new piece of code that to ensure that this piece of code won't affect the performance of your final product. So all in all, the automated pipeline really are a core benefit of when it comes to the adopting DevSecOps for us, because it's where we gain the most in terms of both time and quality. Quickly, you'll see in the middle, there's this big whale on top. It's where we illustrate the containerization of the deployment process. So using technology such as Docker Compose, and Kubernetes, we publish images of the product, and each one being semantically versioned. So it's easily identified by any organization wishing to install it. So we choose containerization for many benefits. In the delivery process, it's a really easy way for any organization to answer the question as how can I really set up something that is get me always the latest, trusted, and published version of the product. So as a result, we ask ourselves how much do we succeed in our delivery product now that we have made these significant changes in the past 2 to 3 years. So we used to have many tools, not very well communicating between each others, stored in different places. So we had AA for writing our functional specification. We used Redmine for an agile board. The code base was in GitHub, and then we used something like TFS, another tool, I think, to package and release the product. So today, we have replaced most of them by one single platform, which is GitLab. It's a centralized collaborative platform along all the delivery process. Like I mentioned, there are, of course, other tools such as Docker and Kubernetes for the deployment strategies, but what GitLab offers is really an easy and seamless integration, and mostly everything can be orchestrated directly from GitLab. Before, we almost had no automation in the deployment process. And as I explained, now we have automation all the way. That's first for better product management and with a more trusted final product. So as a key indicator of success, I will mention one. We used to make no more than 2 releases of the product per year before. And today we have an average delivery of 1 release every 3 weeks. Last year we made 20 releases, and this year, the year before, 30 releases. Of course, moving to DevSecOps doesn't come without changes and few difficulties. I will mention 3 here challenges. The first, we had to invest quite a significant time into building capacity and knowledge around new tools such as Docker, GitLab, and so on, but also new ways of doing things like containerization and Git Flow, lean management and Kanban. So we used to apply agile methodologies, but agile is about not being static and always challenging yourself and evolving. So we adopted new principles through webinars and training sessions from the lean management, especially building Kanban boards. So Kanban boards for us is really key, and we brainstorm a lot around that for setting up new steps of our process for the delivery with very specific rules for each of these steps and specific rules from when can you allow yourself to move from one step to the next. And these matching the DevSecOps process and delivery process as well. Second challenge, I would say, is like I mentioned, we have automated security tests. And this is really key for us, security in the product and for our stakeholders, of course. But we're still looking for more automation. And in particular, we need to set up policy securities. And when it comes to a breach that is identified in our scan, we want kind of automation of the task that the application telling us automatically what to do and how to act upon identified vulnerabilities. So this is something still a bit too manual to us, and we need to move forward on that. The last point is about delivery process and test result. So we have performance test result, we have security test result. We have a lot of raw data there, and we try to use them for valuable indicators. So we are looking for many solutions like the Power BI using a GitLab API, thing that we could put in place for building automated periodic reports of indicators, but indicators that should help us assessing and improving the delivery process again. So all in all, I would say that we have learned mostly from our past 3 years into building a DevSecOps process that more than building a product and delivering a product, we are building a maturity process, the process of high quality delivery in a always timely manner. And if I have really 1 or 2 minutes left, I'd like to quickly show you our GitLab environment and add focusing on 1 or 2 key features that we're using. So this is the gitlab.com SICC group. So it's the roots level of our environment, and it's simply a list of subgroups for products like the .stat suite and a set of project repositories. So it's the code base, but this matches our application and services and so on. I hope you can see my screen, right?
Yeah, we can. It looks great.
Okay, good. So yeah, quickly, this is a set of public repositories where the source code is. We also have public copies of other tools like from Eurostat that we can maintain here for public copies and so on. We have GitLab offers really easy way to build your own website for documentation, for instance. So they have templates here. It's the where we, for instance, we manage our own website for documentation. For instance, that's with documentation with the installation guidelines, configuration guidelines, functional spec, and so on. So we are heavily using the issues, which is ticket management, and the boards. So our boards, from here, you see a set of different boards, depending on the technology, for instance, or on the product management, so for business sides, but they all have in common one thing, which is the process steps. So this is really matching, these steps are our Kanban board matching our DevSecOps delivery process. So from a schedule backlog, which is our short-term delivery strategy, to where you have, for instance, first ticket is where we apply agile way of writing tickets is as Lolita, I want this so that I can do that. We have all the functional requirements, details, we use mockups and so on. And here is where the exchange happened with our stakeholders, internal user, and so on, where we built, brainstorm, and build all our functional specs. When everything is ready, it moves to technical review, technical implementation, peer review. And here, where I was mentioning the GitLab pipelines and automation of check, this is where it happens between peer review and QA. And this is one example to illustrate a successful build and deployment. They are not all that successful, of course. So you see these different steps: build, test. You have parallel tests for unit tests. Then you can trigger manually integration tests. Then a deployment that will trigger another quality assurance step, which are the security scan. So dynamic scans, dynamic security scans, static one. If something has raised a red flag, it goes back to the before to the step before in the process for checking what's the issue and so on. And then it goes to release. It means it's ready to be part of the new version of the .stat suite. And then we're using milestone. Milestone are basically how to compile and prepare and compile everything that is related to a new version of the product. So you have the list of the related tickets, you have a technical change log, and then you have the list of your services and application that will link to the new version of your images and so on. Once this is done, we build our change log announcement of the new version, listing all the related changes and the link to the updated documentation. So, and I think I need to stop now. So over to you, Jens, for the conclusion.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Baptiste. So I will share my screen again. So before we will answer your questions, let me briefly remind you the different topics discussed today. We started with understanding the importance of tailored product design. Then we continued with understanding the importance of stakeholder support in this disruptive transformation from classical software development to a user-centered agile approach. When we looked into the synergies generated by optimized coding approaches. And when, as Jean-Baptiste presented, we finally saw a path for fast and high quality shipping. All of it with a constant focus on the user. So let me please come back to our survey. So I hope you still have it open because I would like to ask you a last question. So I will resume the survey. So the question is about your immediate and very hot feedback about this webinar. We hope that you learned a number of new and interesting things today, or even got motivated to try it out in your own work in case you do not use it already, or you get ideas maybe for improvements on your own. So maybe you got also lost with all this information and have a lot of burning questions that we hope we can answer in a minute. Or alternatively, so one can never exclude this possibility you didn't find anything for you in this webinar and would have preferred doing something else. However, we would like to apologize in this case. And there is a last option. Yeah, please use the escape response in case we were unable to guess any of your reactions. So I will update the slide to see how things evolve. Very good. Very good. I'm very happy to see you that you have heard interesting things, and yes, so we are happy to answer more questions on this. So yeah, thank you so much for participating and listening today. It was a great pleasure for us to be here with you in this webinar. We are happy to answer now any of your questions, unless off topic indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jens and Jean-Baptiste. I really appreciate the informative presentations about your experience, and in particular the transition and all the lessons you've learned. So I'd like to open up the floor for questions. So we have enabled all the participants to share their video and speak freely. If you'd like to raise your hand, and we're happy to give the floor. Of course, I have a load of questions myself, so maybe I'll start off. I mean, my first question is, so what advice would you give? I see there is one hand already. So let me just ask this. So what advice would you give to organizations that are considering the benefit, considering moving to this approach, but are uncertain about what the first step would be? How would you? What is the next step for an organization that maybe has started, recognizing that perhaps its software delivery is slower than it would like to be, and it would like to take a step in the right direction? Is there anything that they should keep in mind, perhaps publications or resources that they could use to tackle this? I mean, in maybe 30 seconds or less. I realize it's a very complex. You probably just gave a presentation on it, but that's my question. Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Jean. I believe one very important point is to get everybody on board who is involved in this project. So yeah, the developers cannot go alone with it. The project managers cannot go alone, and also stakeholders, they need to be involved here because they give you the budget. So it must be a collaborative effort, and of course brainstorming and what in your case what the benefits will be. I mean, they are surely mutable, but also what would be your own path. And so it really depends on probably your current status, what you are maybe already doing of what we have explained today. Maybe you're doing part of it, and so you have to concentrate on other parts. For SISCC, maybe what I could say is we very first started actually with the componentized approach, where we realized if we want to have synergies and get something out of it, we need to componentize our products, because otherwise it's very complicated even for community members to contribute to the project. So when it's in smaller bricks, when it's easy for an organization to bring another brick or just change one building block for them because this is convenient and so on. So this already triggers an involvement. And yeah, the other main change is on how you develop, so that you stop building roadmaps, longer term roadmaps, and make promises that often cannot be successfully achieved, and then instead work with your stakeholders and project managers to see if you can move towards shorter cycles. So not immediately to very short ones, maybe a month. This is what we did in SISCC also. We had first Agile with a cycle of 1 month, and now we are even shorter, as Jean-Baptiste said. But yeah, it depends on situation.
Excellent.
I don't know if Jean-Baptiste is anything else to add.
I agree with you.
Thanks. I'm going to move on to the next question. I see Abdullah. I'm just going to go in the order that team shows me. I see Abdullah has a question. Over to you, Abdullah.
Yes, good afternoon, Jens, Jean-Baptiste. Thanks very much for a very interesting presentation. Jean-Baptiste, you touched upon that already. Can you elaborate a little bit on how you balance the highly componentized architecture and frequent releases on the one hand versus the complexity of deployment, upgrades, and configuration on the other? Thank you.
Maybe Jens, you want to answer this one in details?
Can you just repeat a little bit more slowly?
Sorry. So the highly componentized architecture and frequent releases, of course, this is beneficial to the overall stability of the system, but it also complicates the deployment and upgrades. So how do you balance those factors? How do you continue on this path quantized architecture, frequent releases, and so on, while not overcomplicating the deployment of the system? Thank you.
Okay, yes, thanks, Abdullah. It's a very interesting question, and we have answered this through a new technology, which is about the containerization. So there are different ways of doing with Docker, for instance, and we use Kubernetes, but there's also Docker Compose and other tools that allow to really automate the deployment process. And so we have done this completely in our DevOps environment. So this is how we were able to move from 2-yearly releases to 20, 30 releases per year, because all this is automated. It doesn't take much effort. We can do a release in a day. It's very easy. And then also when the deployment of those in pre-production and production, or maybe even in development environments by the organizations, this depends then, of course, also on your technical capacity. So we have organizations like FCLC who use also containerized approaches, and they told us they could make an update in a few minutes, really. So this is what they told us. They were very happy about this. If you can still continue to do the classical source code based approach, where you build the applications and then deploy one by one. It will take a little bit longer, but indeed you are not obliged to take all of the releases, so you don't have to release everything. What we tell our stakeholders is that we have a demo site which is automatically deployed whenever we release. Anyone in the community and outside, they can go to the demo site and have a look what's currently available. And when the organization can decide, okay, now we have a release that contains sufficiently new features that we were looking for, and now it's time to upgrade our production instance or pre-production instance. So you do not have to take all releases, you pick and choose. And then you do your classical deployment.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to the next question in the interest of time. We may go slightly over, and I apologize for that. So Govin, you're next. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, that was a great presentation. Thank you for that. My question is, of course, you explained about the deployment from Abdullah. So my question is about the observability aspect. You have developed multiple microservices and containerized and deploying it. And what happens after deployment? Anything goes wrong, how are you going to trace the problem, the metrics? Like, if you want to scale a particular microservice based on the load, demand, on-demand scaling or something, are you implementing such things? And what if something goes wrong between a couple of services? How are you going to trace these problems? So are you using any tools, or anything that you do on handling this observability aspect? I mean, it would be great if you could share something on that. Thanks.
Yes, also thank you for this question. Very briefly, so when it comes to scaling, for instance, then it's rather easy if you go for containerized deployments. If you go to the cloud, then you can instantiate very easily new nodes added to your environment, and then respond to the changing needs and usage of your tool. We have not done this ourselves yet, and because we didn't have a need in our DevOps environment for that, but in theory this should work. So the cloud is really there to help you for these cases. The software be able to use features for like mirroring in SQL and load balancing and things like this to add new resources to your infrastructure. When it comes to figure out issues, maybe this is not always easy. So as Jean-Baptiste said, it was also new technology. We are still on the learning path here. We are currently setting up Google. We are using the Google Cloud Platform for our DevOps environment, and there are inbuilt tools in Google Cloud Platform to collect all the logs from the services and then provide them to the authorized admins and developers to get insights. Today, indeed, it's not always very easy, to know what's going on when something goes wrong, but it's possible.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. So next question is from, I believe, Luis.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Jens and Jean-Baptiste. I have a question which is non-technical. I mean, the process that you've been through is really inspiring and very impressive. You know, all the cultural change that you must have been through. I wonder whether in this process there were situations where you were stuck, where you were through this valley of despair, and there was a dark moment where nothing seemed to move. Could you share any of that experience, and what was the say the darkest place where you were, and how did you get out of it in terms of moving forward and not getting stuck in a cultural change of this scale?
Jean-Baptiste, you would like to say something on this, or would you like me to answer?
I'd like to mention maybe first, like I mentioned in the slide, the part where you really need to train your whole team and even yourself, even as project manager, to new approach for containerization. I know we spend quite a lot of time with our developers and external trainings for building the knowledge around this. And there's old ways of doing, and even today, containerization is not found everywhere. So even in the culture of technology and developers, it's not very yet spread, even if it's well applauded by everyone. So it was really a big challenge, and we didn't make the shift in a few months there. So I would mention that. I don't know if you have others points, Jens, you have in mind.
No, I think it was really the main point was in capacity building at the beginning, and also the technology acceptance by the organization.
Excellent. That's very helpful. I'm going to move now. In the interest of time, we're running a little over, so I'm going to ask a few of the questions from the chat. I'll just combine them so you can see for yourselves. One is from Bogdan. He asks, how often do you deploy new releases to production environment on your side? That's one. And then the other one is you have 3 core products. How does this translate to the number of product owners and dev teams? So perhaps maybe what is the org chart? I mean, how many developers do you have, and how many product owners do you have? And so is there a maybe, I don't know, elaborating on this point? In the UN, we often have one developer with, say, 5 different products. Typically, it's the opposite in the outside world. So I'd like to know.
Yeah, in the solution team, the overall team, we have 3 smaller teams. One is the product management team, and we are currently 4 people, me included. So the product owners. And when we have 2 developer teams, one is with 3 developers and the other is with 5 developers, because we have 2 different technologies. One is JavaScript, there are 3 developers, and then there is .NET and SQL Server, which is for developers. So it's a team that has a good size for Agile, because you should probably not go above 8 people in the developer team in order to have an efficient process. And the other question on how often we update in production. Actually, we went into production very recently, just at the beginning of the year, the OECD. And we are looking forward to do our next production upgrade in the coming days. So yeah, it will be the second time. We will probably not take all of the releases at the OECD also. So we will, as I said earlier, pick and choose when it really contains the main features that OECD specifically is looking for. So it might be maybe a minimum 2 times per year, but more probably 4 times a year.
Okay, yeah, this is very good. I have just want to check to see if there are any more questions, if anybody has any pressing concerns. otherwise, I think we've had a great chat. I really appreciate the time you've given us and your willingness to share your experiences. And I really hope, I mean, my purpose in asking you to present is I would hope people would emulate and copy your success in their own projects and ask questions about how we can drive software delivery to be more influential in our organizations, as this is growing, becoming the medium for reaching and engaging with users. So I really hope that this is not seen by the participants as an esoteric chat about how software engineers can be better coders. It's really about how can we build, as you've demonstrated, products and that meet user needs, and these user needs are drawn from the missions that our organizations are engaged in. Our missions are very noble. The OECD and the UN, we're engaged in some of the most important challenges that humans have undertaken. So I really think it's important for us to take the importance of software delivery to heart and to say we need to build better software because our missions matter. So I appreciate your time, and I hope that people will ponder these thoughts and connect the technical implementation that you've discussed with the broader purposes that we all have and why we're doing these things. So thank you very much. I hope everyone has enjoyed this talk, and I'm going to stop the recording now.
Thank you very much too.